and welcome to Rainbow History Class, the queer and trans history that you probably didn't or don't get in school. My name is Rudy Jean Rigg.
And my name is Hannah McElhinney. And yeah, you probably didn't get this queer history in school.
No.
But I have been waiting to see you because I've been caught up in some dog park drama.
No. Are you serious?
Yeah, I have. And I'm not talking about like dogs getting into a spat. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that I have entered that period of my life where I am engaging with local council issues.
Again?
Again. I have done it before. But in this time, I'm actually unionizing with some other fellow local lesbians and their dogs.
Would you care to explain?
So, get this. Now, okay, I don't want to dox myself, but I live in, I guess, a gayborhood, right?
Sure.
Area. It's like historically a queer district. Gay people live there. There's not much for the non-gays, not a lot of green space. Very kind of industrial area. But they're trying, obviously. Gentrification does what gentrification does, and they're trying to attract more young families into the area through these green spaces. I would say that they are a pathetic excuse for a green space. I'm talking, it's like a nature strip kind of size park they're putting in places. So anyway, they got this new park and Sandrine, my dog, loves it. She loves nothing more than playing with the ball. So Hannah and I took her to the park and, you know, she's obsessed. She was having some fun with some of her dog park friends and I got talking to this one dog's two mums who was saying that the dog park, this little park area, was going to be cut in half.
Oh.
I was like, but Sandrine's just found a home here and like a community, so this is not good. She was saying to me that apparently what they did was they did this park and they put in some kind of cool looking structural play equipment. They had obviously some kind of architect to do it. They'd done like a lot of kind of native plant, you know, sensory trail with like a lot of nice like learning points of
wait, for the dogs?
No, for the children, well, for everybody, so that you could learn about, you know, like the species indigenous to this area and, you know, what land we were on and all those types of things. So I thought, this is good.
Yeah.
This is good. But apparently some local mothers, I am trying to resist calling them Karens because I haven't met them, but they are furious because the playground is not fun enough for their children because it's too architectural looking. It's like sort of metal.
Yeah.
I think it looks quite nice. I mean, it's artistic and I guess supposed to be for free play, but no, these mothers want a bunch of slides.
Yeah, they want a squeaky slide that gives you plastic burn on the way.
Yeah, and something that makes the hair on your arm stand up and,
yeah,
you know, all of that kind of thing. They want like a full plastic monstrosity.
They want a McDonald's Happy Meal playground.
They do. I don't understand why just because they've just made this park, people have come to it and now these mothers are saying it's not good enough because their kids don't like it. Instead of teaching their kids to enjoy the sensory trail and learn about like, you know, native flora, no, they're kicking up a stink. So some local lesbians started a change.org position.
No.
They've been going to the local council meetings and apparently these local lesbians were completely affronted by this group of mothers who told them, and they've been living in this area for a long time, sweetie, yeah, this area's actually changing. And, you know, you need to get with the times.
Whoa, what?
I know.
You know, it's so bizarre. I love how people don't pay attention to council issues and then all of a sudden when something happens, it's been underway for like multiple years, built, and then all of a sudden they're like have an issue with it, even though like plans like this are always like available, like as plans, like here's what we're planning to do.
Totally. And I also think just obviously we're aware that the area is changing because this group has come through. I've been reading all these articles as well in like the New York Times and The Cut about this rage against dogs, because in the pandemic everybody got dogs, and so now there's just too many dogs, and you know, certain council infrastructure can't really deal with it, which I totally get. So I understand there's this rage against dogs, but I also think, you know what a lot of people did during the pandemic if they didn't get a dog? Had a child. Yeah. So I feel the same way, unfortunately, to the people that had children during the pandemic. And I think there is an option for us to all live, you know, in harmony. But I think don't come after my dog's grass space.
But that's at what point are you going to run for mayor? That's my question.
I feel like I've got so much more to talk about this of what's going on in my street right now, but it would be naming too many people that don't deserve to have their name in the public domain.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Well, let's move on and let's talk about what I'm going to tell a story of today, and that is the history of the binder.
Amazing. I know you've been researching hard for this, so I'm really looking forward to it.
I want to start off, I love doing little 101s because it's basically like context storytelling, and I think that's really important. So let's do a 101 on chest binding before we get into the meat of the subject.
Okay.
So chest binding has been done for a very, very long time. Like I'm talking to like the first couple of hundreds of the AD for cultural, religious and stylistic reasons. Not all at the same time, but often they were they intersect. And because during different periods of time in history, there's been different sort of perspectives and ideas about what the quote unquote ideal female form has been, because chest binding has historically been for women or people with like larger chests. And generally in Australia, the UK and the US and in Europe have this idea about the history of binders and corsetry because of like the history that we're taught and the sort of style and outfits that, you know, sort of our broad history has, been.
We see, yeah, totally. I feel like if I just think of history, just in general, my head first goes to, you know, women with like their boobs like pushed up by this like corset, and then also that bizarre fashion trend where they would shave their tops of their heads to make their foreheads really big.
Like Mary of Scotland.
Yeah. And it was like the ideal form of a woman to have a giant forehead.
I mean, go off.
You shave your eyebrows, so I feel like you're close, but I feel like, God, can we bring back trying to raise your hairline to the crown of your head?
Well, today I found out that Luke doesn't like my no eyebrow look because he says it's a very uncanny valley and it makes him kind of uncomfortable.
I kind of get it, especially when you're doing a dewy look with the makeup.
Yeah, but I like it.
Yeah.
It's like, he's like, it's to put me in a tailspin because anyway, I don't want to go there.
I would say that you are an uncanny valley type of person. Like I feel like you just air too close to human but aren't quite.
Thank you. That's a really big compliment. But I want to go through a couple of different looks where we've seen that sort of chest binding being done throughout history, but in Asia, because I feel like we often look through like a Western lens, but I want to point out some ones that I'm sure like everyone is actually across, but they're from Asia. So firstly, in China, during the era of China's imperial dynasties, revealing a woman's curves wasn't something that was to be done. It was actually considered lewd. Is that how you say it?
Lewd.
Yes. Lewd, whatever. Lewd. And so people's chests were often bound with a moxion or a doudois, which is kind of like an undergarment. So we're talking really about undergarments.
Right.
And this garment was particularly popular during the Tang and Song dynasties.
Right.
And
when were they?
So that's a good question. And I actually, out of all the dates that I did put in here, I didn't put those. But I have a hyperlink because I am smart. So now I'm just going to read from Wikipedia, okay?
You have Song Dynasty, and 960 to 1279 is when the Song Dynasty was.
Okay, great. And the Tang was through, listen, there's a couple of dates going on here.
The Tang Dynasty was 618 to 907 Common Era.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wikipedia. Okay, so that's when those dynasties were, and it began as like something that was sort of in the traditional dress in China, and this chest binding actually became an exclusive aesthetic practice for women that continued up until the 1930s, and it was more prevalent within upper classes. So that's kind of, it became like a fashion thing.
I guess fashion was the domain of the upper classes.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Still, I guess, is.
Yeah. So in Korea, we had a similar thing where Korean women were wearing the traditional hanbok, which is the just like traditional dress in Korea, and men wore it too. It's not, I think when we think of a hanbok, people think of like the dresses that women wear, but there was like men wore it too. I think hanbok is actually the word for like just traditional dress. It's not like pertaining to something in particular. But again, this was to conceal the female form, and so they would bind their chest with a cloth band again. And the thing is, hanbok has been worn since antiquity. I haven't heard that word since I played Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego.
Antiquity.
Yeah, it was a real throwback.
I think you must have said it when you recorded the audiobook.
Yeah, true. It's just a nice word. I'd
Antiquity.
say it's like one of my favorite words.
It's like cellar door.
Yeah, true. I was in a band called Cellar Door.
I am unsurprised.
Yeah. And the earliest visual depiction of a hanbok can be traced back to the Three Kingdoms of Korea, which was in 57 BC through to 668 AD. So we're looking at something that's like very, very far back in history. Now, in Japan, we have the kimono, and that also flattens the appearance of the chest. And again, your chest is being bound by a flattened piece of fabric called an obi and a datamake. I think that's how you pronounce it. My Japanese is pretty bad. That's a belt, and it's wrapped around your torso.
Right.
From the chest to your waist. Now, this is where I get into my first little nugget. Okay, so just get ready to eat.
All right, I get ready to eat.
So asarashi is used by Japanese women to flatten their chests underneath traditional wear, but it was also used by samurais to prevent the severity of injuries.
Okay, I am deep in samurai, I guess, wormholing.
Why?
Because I started watching Shogun. I don't know if you've seen it. It's about Japan. It's like medieval Japan.
Wait, is that based on the game?
Maybe, but it's Portuguese Catholics have done trade or like have got like a colonial settlement in Japan, and then these English Protestants like rock up and basically well, that's episode 1. But it's really freaking violent. So I have to have a blanket on my head most of the episodes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really intensely violent. But what I was, shocked by is just how much I didn't know about Sabuku.
Oh, yeah.
And the, stabbing yourself in the stomach.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing. It's I think that one of the general principles of the samurai is saving face and pride and like
honor. Yeah. It was a privilege for seppuku to get permission to end your life by stabbing yourself in the stomach.
It's pretty wild, but I mean, like, there's been wilder practices out there,
Honestly,
rituals.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you know how I go if I can get through another episode.
Please. Yeah. And this garment, or this kind of wrapping of fabric, it wasn't just used for preventing serious injuries or being used as like a way to manipulate the visual figure that someone has with clothing. It's obviously found its way into anime. Okay, so no surprises there. But what I found really interesting is like I saw this image of I guess for those of you who've never really seen anime, I can only compare it to that scene where Amanda Bynes is in the bathroom and she's the man and she's wrapping like this random like medical fabric around her chest to like bind her chest.
I feel like, She's the Man was such an awakening for so many people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But what's interesting is Amanda Bynes got seriously bad gender dysphoria from doing that film.
I can really, I mean, I think that was like the 2000s, right, where they did not really have any practices in place to look after the well-being of the actors. Like, he was Renee Zellweger in Bridget Jones's Diary.
What do you mean?
Renee Zellweger was in Bridget Jones's Diary. Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I thought. I was like, oh my God, I got them confused because you had this blank look. I was like, I've said the wrong person. Might be Winona Ryder. No, but she, you know, having to kind of gain weight to play that character that was supposed to be quote unquote fat or overweight or undesirable, apparently, you know, gave her really big, you know, issues with body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
So screw the 2000s and their filmmaking practices.
Yeah, it was not very good. But anyway, for those of you who've never seen anime, that image of Amanda in She's the Man is like a good visual representation of what I'm talking about in terms of like the wrapping of the chest with fabric. Now, in anime, this is used to depict someone who's like super tough, and it's normally associated with characters who are delinquent, particularly in like what's considered classic anime or like older anime.
And are these male characters?
Yes, but also with the kind of anime trope of female characters cross-dressing as men.
Right. Okay.
And often it's because they're like, I don't know, like a hitman or a spy or, you know, doing something a bit delinquenty.
Right.
Yeah. And so often it'll be sort of not just like someone wearing a button down, their button down will be open and you can kind of see it underneath, and that's how you know like what kind of person they are and kind of maybe a little bit into their character.
So it's kind of like genderqueer flagging.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So that is sort of a little 101 on where we can see chest binding in non-Western countries and in Asia instead. So that is definitely something that I think you should go away and have a look at, because these garments are really beautiful. I just think the craftsmanship that go into these traditional garments are just amazing. So
I do wonder when, you know, because obviously fashion has become more and more casual over the centuries. But I do wonder, like, I kind of love the idea that chest binding had this, I guess, elegance, or like a lot went into the garments. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for modern binding. At the moment, we see it as kind of, well, it's an undergarment really. But I wonder if, you know, there's different ways to do it in the future.
Well, that's the thing, because it's like, obviously, as I said at the top of the 101, like it was sort of part of the reason women quote unquote had to do this in terms of binding was because they wanted to like alter the female form, and they being like men. So obviously that aside, and we're just talking about like what do women want or what do people want, you know? I think it is really interesting because I'll talk about it more as we go through, but I do wonder if it's going to like come back in vogue almost with like mainstream. But let's move on to corsets, because now we're looking at something that it kind of developed later in history, because these sort of garments that I just spoke about in Asia, they have been around for a long time, whereas corsets haven't. Or have they? So the first depiction of the corset was actually visually depicted in a figurine of a goddess, a snake goddess. And this figurine...
Surely a snake wouldn't need a corset. Like...
No, it was a snake goddess. She wasn't all snake. Okay? It was just a goddess with some snake vibes.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And this goddess belonged to the Minoan people, who were the first civilization to wear corsets. These people inhabited Crete in Greece, and they lived around 1000 BC. And this snake goddess was a figurine, like a sculpture, and she's depicted wearing a corset-like garment. And not only was this corset-like garment depicted in this figurine, but it was also depicted in artwork as well, suggesting that both men and women wore these corset garments.
Right.
And the first known corset that was made from linen and wool was actually found in a tomb in Crete.
Hang on, just putting some biblical knowledge together. There was a corset made of linen and wool.
Yes.
They're the two fabrics that can't be worn at the same time, according to the Bible.
Well,
must have been some pagan shit, and that's why.
Well, I mean, it was in Greece. Were they occupied in 1000 BC by the
Well, I guess they
Romans?
would be, no, I guess if there were garments that were both linen and wool, then when old mates, the Roman Catholics, rose to power and tried to stamp out anything that was pagan, I guess they were like, hey, those garments appear to be linen and wool. That's not on.
That simply will not do. It was in a tomb. I don't know the context of that. All I found was that it was in a tomb. So whether someone was wearing it, whether they had put it in there as like in the trunk or, along with other belongings of the person, I'm not sure. Who was this person? I don't know. All I know is that it was in a tomb in Crete. Now, if we move further along, that was in 1000 BC. We move further along to the 1500s. The corset, as we know it today, was first seen really in its sort of modern form in France. And it was introduced by Catherine why am I stumbling? De Medici.
Oh, the Medicis.
Yeah.
Catherine de Medici.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
famous
Catherine-
Medici family.
Yeah. Catherine
Medici.
Sure. Catherine M. Kathy M.
Kathy M.
Catherine
de Medici.
And this was worn in the French court. So it was like kind of an upper class again. Like she's obviously upper class. Upper class love these corsets. I don't know why. I can't work it out. I'm like, okay, you can't breathe. We get it.
I mean, I feel like there's always been a sense of suffering and style. Anything worthy, anything worth doing causes pain to you in some way. That's, the something that we get from, I don't know, Christianity.
Sure.
It's true. It's true.
Sure.
The idea of like putting the body or the physical self through pain and suffering is a way of showing service to the Lord. And maybe that's why the corsets were popular. I don't know.
I guess so, but the French court decided that it was popular because it was essential to the female figure's attractiveness, which I think is just so bullshit. But I wasn't around then, so maybe I would have wanted to conform to these beauty standards. I'm not sure.
You literally wear corsets now. I've seen you in them.
Yeah. I'm in the market for a couple new ones.
I think that perhaps you are interested in holding up these beauty standards.
I will not apologize. Now, from the 1500s, obviously, we go through the 1800s and 1900s, and we have a lot of corset fashion that goes through these periods in time in Europe. And we start with sort of a full corset that is designed to cinch the waist, to accentuate the hips, and to just shove your boobs as far up towards your neck as possible and create this incredible figure. I think they called it the S figure because of like how it sort of curved. I'll let you decide what that means to you. So that was sort of at the beginning of the 1800s, and over the course of those 200 years, I think, I'm not good at math, but by 1910, let's say, the corset and what it was designed to do had drastically changed, and it had become a garment that was designed to, again, sort of exist more so to flatten the stomach area, to flatten the chest area, and to sort of make everything a little bit more quote unquote boyish. And this is where we see one of the corset's sort of final forms in the 1920s and its association with the flapper fashion, which is a more rectangular look. It is not accentuating the chest area at all anymore, and it's going back to the styles of like other areas in the world where corset and binding was used to flatten one's chest. So
I guess as well, because that would be, the 1920s was post World War One, so that means that was kind of the beginning of, we had women's suffrage, and then women having to take on work while the men were at war. So, the idea of kind of masculine aesthetics or boyish aesthetics, I can see how that would be, more coveted then.
Well, for a couple of reasons. And the first being that like women at that time were kind of like, fuck you, I will look like a boy because I'm sick of like trying to be beholden to your image of a woman, like what you think a woman is. And the other thing was that during World War One, and this is a fun fact, during World War One, the corset fell out of fashion because women were asked not to wear corsets so that the metal that was used to bone the corsets could be used for the production of war weaponry.
No way.
Yeah, and
That's wild.
And this actually, according to a source that I found, gave oh my gosh, now there's math involved, 28,000 tons of metal, which was enough to build 2 full battleships.
So basically what you're saying is if we want to end war efforts, we all need to start wearing corsets.
And chainmail and full sets of body armor.
Righto, then you'll see me tomorrow in full metal suit.
I've been also trying to look for some chainmail that I can wear for every day, so
All right, well,
I'm ahead of the curve.
I'm doing it to stop Australia's military exports, and you can do it for stylistic reasons.
Hey, they achieve the same end goal.
They do. So there you go. Get a corset, stop the wars.
Exactly. Yeah.
I should make a poster.
Yeah. That's your first, what do they call it? Your first, gonna be your first thing you do as mayor.
Of my local area, for sure. I'm going to have Anthony Albanese on the phone to me being like, that was really irresponsible for you to put the call out for everybody to start wearing metal corsets because AUKUS is in jeopardy.
Yeah, and you didn't even let me ask me to speak at your corset event, so.
Exactly.
Okay. So now we're post World War I. Okay, we know the situation with corsetry now, but then post World War II, which was post 1945, girdles were a thing, and this was for, quote, snatching the waist.
So when we say that you're snatched, this harks back to the girdle era.
Yes, it does. And it was popular because, again, like, people were just wanting to, like, I can't even make a pop noise with my mouth. I'm just not gay enough. Like, anyway, they were just, like, but there's a particular noise. Don't you hear it? It's like, the girdle was a thing that sort of combined newer technology, new garment constructing technology with that traditional corsetry. So it was sort of more stretchy, but it's still boning in it to sort of, again, snatch the waist, but then also minimize the hips. So it's interesting, like, what part of a body is particularly coveted during different times. And, you know, in World War II and post World War II, there was a really interesting piece of sort of fashion history that occurred in that women were obviously working in more office jobs and they were getting higher levels of education and they were sort of out in the general community a lot more because obviously they had to be. The men were like dying in trenches from trench foot. Duh.
Trench foot, absolutely terrible.
Yeah. And I'm sorry if you're a war veteran.
I don't know how many war veterans listen in, but we are sorry about the trench foot.
Yeah. Again, I just want to note that during this period in time that, you know, items for manipulating the body were often not first used because women wanted to use it as a form of like fashion, but they were put into place so that men in example like office situations wouldn't be super distracted by the quote like seductive nature of the female form. And so these garments were used to conceal particular parts of a body.
So basically it's just a cycle because women are like, fine, we'll minimize our chests and hips and wear this. Next minute, they're walking around and men go, oh, no, that's hot. And so then they're like, you can't be all flat-chested like that. So then the next era is the women are like, cool, I'm going to accentuate my curves then. Is that better? And the men are like, no, that's hot.
Yeah, literally.
Go back to the boy thing.
Yeah, literally. It's pretty much like that. It's just wild. It's like, you know, when they say everything will come back in fashion, they're not wrong. And the corset,
as long as there is a male gaze, the fashion cycle is protected.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the apple bottom jeans and the boots with the fur though.
Well, all we need to know is that
when pear bottom jeans and boots with no fur are in, we can definitely say that eventually the apple bottom.
It's true. And then we just need a few men to be like,
let's do a survey.
A few men to be like, yeah, that's not hot. And then we'll get it in fashion again.
Oh my God. Men. Anyway, moving on. Like, I just can't with that. Anyway, moving on. We have a good background about garments that have been used to manipulate the body for various reasons across a lot of different areas in the world, across different periods of time. So now we've got a good background on that. Let's move and look at how the queer community have utilized these garments and knowledge of garment construction to their advantage.
Right. Cool.
So the first person that I want to tell you about today, now I must say that the people that I'm flagging out, I don't want to give their whole A to Z history because I think that every one of these people deserves their own episode. So I don't want to like go too deep in them, but they definitely contributed to this. So I want to talk about this particular area of their life.
Okay.
Now, the first person is someone by the name of Ella Wesner. Now, Ella Wesner was born on May 29th and she lived from 1841 until November 10th.
All I have in my head is Ella Wesner, jaunty Ella Wesner.
Is that a song?
No, but that's it. It is that the tune exists.
Oh.
I think it's Alouette. Yeah, but now it's Ella Wesner, jaunty Ella Wesner. So go on.
You're like a
Tell me about Ella Wesner.
Okay. Well, she died in 1917. That
Okay,
was
so-
what you cut me off from saying. So
Not too soon then.
no. Okay. Back to the positive stuff.
She's out of copyright. Carry on.
Sure. So she was a celebrated male impersonator, part of the Gilded Age. Now, fun fact, the Gilded Age was actually named in 1873 by Mark Twain, who said that this period of time was an interval of economic expansion as an era of materialistic excesses combined with political corruption was afoot. So that's a good explanation if you have no idea what the Gilded Age is. Basically, like people just wanted to look fucking hot and like they were not very good politicians.
Are we in the Gilded Age now?
Perhaps. So Ella was basically participating in vaudeville theatre and she was binding her chest as part of her character. And her character as a male impersonator was, quote, a swaggering, cigar-smoking, swearing young man.
Storme de Lavery prototype.
Yeah, kind of. And there's a lot of really cool photographs of Ella as these like characters, and it's just really cool to see. Like it's very nice for like photography, I must say, and then also to see this sort of character that was sort of around like between like 1860 probably and 1915. Like it's really cool. I don't know. So that's the first example of binding in a queer sense that I wanted to point out. Now, the second out of my three is Michael Dillon, and Michael Dillon lived from the 1st of May 1915 until the 15th of May 1962, so almost like a round trip there. And he was a British doctor and author, and he was the first transgender man to ever undergo a phalloplasty. And Michael was an early user of masculinizing hormone replacement therapy, so HRT, and if he couldn't get any better, he was one of the first recorded participants of a double mastectomy for the purpose of gender affirmation surgery. Yes. And it gets better. He had a book in 1946 called Self, A Study in Ethics and Endocrinology. And this is widely considered to be a piece of pioneering work in the field of transgender medicine. So he had a very full life. Doing lots of different stuff, and I think he really did put his body on the line, to be honest, because medical knowledge was kind of fucked after the Nazis burnt all those books and persecuted us.
Yeah.
So as well as all of those things, he has been documented to have used a belt to bind his chest before he had his double mastectomy. So there you go. Now, to cap this section off, the last person I wanted to talk about was Lou Sullivan, and Lou lived between 1951 and 1991, and he was perhaps the first transgender man to publicly identify as gay, and is largely responsible for the modern understanding of sexual orientation being different to gender identity. And he described them as distinct, unrelated concepts. He had a book, or like a kind of like a pamphlet style like publication that came out in 1985 and it was called Information for the Female to Male, Cross-Dresser and Transsexual. And this was basically like a how to achieve like particular things that people were wanting to achieve but had no resources to do so, or the resources were like sparse and inaccessible, and he sort of put this how-to guide together. And there's a section, and listen, I will say the things that he put together in this document at the time were very like cutting edge, and they were very innovative, and they were obviously what a large proportion of the community understood to be like the go. But looking through it, which I did, a lot of it is a bit like, okay, well, we have a better understanding of that now, and things have definitely changed. But a couple of things that stood out to me was that section in the document was called How to Look 30 When You Are 30. And I found that.
Give me that document. This is what I've been looking for.
I found it so funny because it is so true. Like even now with even more modern medicine, like I am going on 30. I am on a full dose of testosterone, and to most people, if I do get assumed as male, which isn't very often, mind you, people do think that I am like 19.
A minor.
Yeah. Literally the amount of times that I have been assumed male in the presence of my sister, they think that I am her younger brother. And by younger brother, they mean like 17, 18. Like it's so funny. So I found that so funny that in 1985, that was still a pressing issue.
By the sounds of it, it always will be.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't want to look my age. Like aging is nice, but I think it's fun when you can kind of play around with it.
I agree. And I also think that what's interesting is how assign what certain ages are supposed to look like with regards to gender.
Well, I think it's funny. I mean, in this case, in Sullivan's case, I think it was sort of like a lot of it was sort of
like not having full facial hair, or a super dropped voice to as low as it could be, or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I think he was pertaining to, but it was also a lot to do with fashion, and that's where it leads me into the next portion of the history of the binder, and that is how things were revolutionized with the use or by the use of spandex. Because in this guide that Lou Sullivan put together, there's a section on how to bind, and there's like a don't do this but do that sort of style recount of what you should do. And in the what you should do section, Sullivan suggests using a spandex style undergarment that is designed for manipulating men's like quote pot belly.
Right.
So it was this compression garment basically that was marketed towards men, but Lou Sullivan was suggesting that people use that in conjunction with some other things to adequately bind your chest.
What were they doing before that? Like bandages?
Yeah, there was like, I don't really want to mention it because obviously like I don't want to like, put ideas on the table that I really would not recommend, but yeah, like just inappropriate like tapes and bandages.
Got it.
Yeah. So this was sort of one of the first concrete mentions that I could find in like a written source to suggest that like compression garments made from spandex were a better alternative to medical tape that had no stretch in it, for example.
Yeah.
So let's talk about spandex because this really changed the game. It really changed the game for like all sorts of undergarments, compression garments, swimwear, the whole lot. So let's unpack spandex.
Aerobics.
Yeah, literally. So spandex is actually the colloquial name for a general fiber. Elastane is another word for it. Lycra is another word for it. And it's funny because spandex is like a general name, but like lycra is a patented name, for example, and I think elastane isn't. So it's kind of like they're all the same thing. They're all a synthetic fiber, but like depending on how you've constructed it and what particular like synthetics you've used is like whether or not it's a lycra or a spandex, I don't know. But they basically all do the same thing. So this fiber was first patented in 1958 under the name of fiber K. Lord knows why.
Okay.
Sounds like a drug, but anyway.
I know. Can you get in a fiber K hole?
Special K was almost fiber K.
Yeah, where you've compressed too much. You're in a fiber K hole.
Yeah. I like that. Anyway, so After this initial patenting of Fiber K, it was subsequently rebranded to Lycra. And this began its marketing in 1962. And at first, Lycra fiber was used to make medical stockings. So compression stockings that you may wear pre and post surgery. I know I got them when I had top surgery. I also know that I use compression socks to fly because it's just so much better for you.
Yeah. My mum's on a plane right now and she packed them early.
Underrated.
She got.
I wore them when we were on the plane to America, and I don't know. I loved them. I felt like I kind of
a bit of bounce with your step. Yeah, you kind of trotting.
Yeah, I kind of was. It was great. Hopped off the plane at LAX with
normal sized ankles.
Normal sized ankles. That's the thing. Didn't wear them on a plane to Sydney the other week. I swell up like a balloon.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Moving past medical stockings, Lycra or elastane or whatever you want to call it made its first debut in fashion in the late 1950s when Audrey Hepburn wore her iconic black Lycra outfit for promotional imagery for the film Funny Face, where it's shot in black and white. She has a beautiful little crop and she's wearing this outfit which from the photos it was hard to discern what sort of style it really was because there wasn't much contrast, but it's iconic. Like just we'll put it on the stories. Just go look it up. It's.
I reckon that is an iconic Lycra look, but I would take that and I would raise you Kathy Freeman's gold medal winning full bodysuit from the 2000 Olympic Games. Yes. That to me is peak Lycra.
Oh my God. If you're in Melbourne, have never been to Science Works and done the Kathy Freeman run,
you can race her and she's got an insanely unfair advantage with that Lycra suit.
I love it.
And your clown with just your regular shoes.
Yeah.
Can't even come close.
This image set of Audrey Hepburn really launched Lycra into the mainstream, and we saw it being used as fabric for swimwear in 1960s. And by the mid-1970s, with the emergence of the women's liberation movement, girdle sales finally began to drop.
Woo!
And the girdle was lip syncing for its life.
Oh my God.
So what did Lycra do in response? Because girdles, like I said earlier, were being manufactured out of Lycra. So what do you think Lycra as a company started to do?
Make Spanx.
Almost. They decided to market Lycra as the premier fabric that should be used in aerobic fitness fashion.
Right.
So they were like,
Jane Fonda can thank... Who knew that Jane Fonda and the modern day binder had the same lineage?
Yeah, basically. So this was the sort of fashion that Lycra was being used in 1970s. So really that was kind of the precipice of like Lycra elastane as like a manufacturing material coming into the mainstream, becoming more accessible and finding its way into a lot of different areas of life. So both in undergarments, both in fashion forward things and basically like everywhere, sport, leisure, runway, like premier couture fashion, like it was just kind of everywhere because it was like really had gained enough popularity to become accessible as a in part of garment construction. In the 1980s, we come back around like a full circle again, and it was finally like accessible enough to be used to manufacture hosiery, so stockings and tights. And of course, in the 80s, we loved a power suit. We loved a skirt and blazer combo. And
Not
what did
just
you
in the 80s?
Well,
right now.
Exactly.
But yes, you're right.
So Lycra was being used once again in the 1980s for undergarments. So let's look at the 1990s because this is really where I guess trans or queer specific undergarments began being thought of or constructed or used more readily. And by that I mean, like, for example, in 1997, the company Underworks began to like sell undergarments, and it was sort of one of the first brands to produce or mass produce sort of like those compression garments that like Lou Sullivan was talking about in 1985. And it was kind of cool because like obviously back in 1985, if you were someone with a chest that wanted to access these men's marketed products, you had to go into a store because it was like the only way you could purchase them. Whereas in like 1997, when Underworks started manufacturing these same products, it was much more accessible because the internet was beginning to exist and mail order things were an option. Obviously not for everyone, but it was one of
I remember those catalogs.
Yeah, you could order things in the mail, and it was a little bit of like a hoop jumping scenario where that you had to like forge your parents' signature maybe, or you needed to like put down a false name, but still, like, it was more accessible than the previous thing, which was to have to go into a store and be like, yep, just buying these for my boyfriend, whatever. So that was the 1990s. Now, I scoped out Reddit, as I always do, and I found some firsthand accounts of what trans people were doing in the 1990s and in the early 2000s for binding. And the reason I had to do this was because I guess information, unlike Lou Sullivan's like kind of how-to guide, became a lot more disseminated across the internet, and it was so hard, like much harder to kind of collate the kind of lineage of the binder garment, especially because it's really hard to access early catalogs of things. Like, for example, Underworks, I guess, now makes sort of like gender neutral undergarments, and there's heaps of like other binder brands that have come out in like the last 15 years, for example, because I remember when I was like 12 and 13, like I knew that certain companies were like making them, but I went to Reddit for like first-hand accounts because I didn't want to like peek around and kind of just see a catalog and assume stuff. A couple of Reddit users were saying that K-tape, which is kinesiology tape, which is a medical tape, for those of you who don't know, that has like some stretch and pull. It has like a kind of a multi-woven fabric that's kind of backed onto this like sticky adhesive that's used for kinesiology, and people were using this in the late 90s, but it was only really available through physical therapists or chiropractors or that sort of thing, so it wasn't really something that you could access at the supermarket like you could go into Chemist Warehouse today and purchase. People were using that though, which was interesting because it was sort of the first thing other than a rigid medical tape that was used. Yep. So that was one thing. Would not recommend, obviously, to use that at all for this purpose. It's only should be used for
strapping your foot,
making sure your patella doesn't come out, all that kind of thing, tennis elbow, whatnot. Anyway, so there was a couple of accounts of people saying that cosplayers with chests in the early 2000s would use medical tape, obviously not recommended, but they would use that to kind of change the form of their and look of their cosplays. But of course, this is uncomfortable and fragile, and it wasn't able to be used in every day. You know, it wasn't something that people could really do every day because, again, it's like rigid, you can't breathe, it's like super hard to cut off and stuff like that. But a lot of people said that the most popular choice during this time was to use sports bras and various different kinds of bandages,
and like a bunch at once, right? You put on like a bunch of sports bras, right?
Yeah. And this was from like the 90s, right? And like right through till, I am going to say honestly, like 2012, which is when I sort of like saw a lot of brands, not a lot of brands, but like brands pop up and it be more accessible to people. Because I know back when, like, I'm talking like 2010 to like 2014, I would do like the sports bra thing, or what else? Or this is so, like, I don't even want to talk about what I did because like it's just not, like I said, I don't want to put these ideas on the table because like I just would not want anyone else to do it. I would really recommend doing what I ended up doing, which was to just I got like a size up in like my jumper and my school shirt, and then I literally just like didn't wear any undergarments, and that kind of did it for me. But obviously that's because like I was not like carrying a large like bra size, so I could do that and get away with it. But yeah, it was kind of annoying, and it was really hard, and it was frustrating as well because it's like I knew that it wasn't good for my body, but there was nothing really else that I just didn't feel like I had an option.
There wasn't like anything purpose built for that.
No. And so like I had to like compare my methods to the science and technology behind these purpose-made garments and go and make, like, as a 14-year-old, like an educated decision as to how close I thought they were comparably, and kind of guesstimate how I should use these garments for how long based on that. And it's just like not a safe thing to do at all. And I think that like using a binder is the safest option. And even then, obviously, you need to adhere to the wearing instructions, because you obviously they are still a compression garment, and much like we see and saw with overuse of corsetry in like the 1800s and 1900s, like you can have adverse effects, but like that's the same if you're like fucking lacing your shoes too tight, it can give you a bunion.
Yeah, or wearing your bloody airplane socks on land.
Yeah, for too long. Like it's like, I mean, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to wear anything, and it goes for the same for like everything from shoelaces to binders. So that's kind of where we end up. And now obviously today a lot of more companies have been coming out. I know that in Australia we have some really great trans owned and operated companies that produce binders, and even if you want to get ones from overseas in America and the UK, the shipping is obviously a lot better than it was like back in the day. I remember back in the day it cost like almost more than the garment to actually get it shipped.
I remember, yeah. I think as well, you know, when we look at binders, because it's nice to know that there's custom built ones, because something about sports bras is that even though they're designed to stop like movement, they're still kind of designed to not compromise your feminine appearance in any way. So I think, you know, nothing has filled that gap until the late 2010s, because even if you're wearing things like super tights, you know, sports bras, they're doing everything they can to be feminine. If they're pink or they're covered in flowers or they're like somehow push up with padding in it as well.
Or like even the marketing for it is like, we'll make sure this bra stops your boobs from bouncing 5 foot, but don't worry, people will still know you're a woman. Like it's like okay, it's, I don't know. I find it weird how intense the reassurance of gender is with particular like
exercise wear, especially outdoor wear as well. Like any kind of outdoor or kind of active wear that you're supposed to hike in or something. It's like, don't worry, you look silly, but we've made it clear you're a girl.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. But the thing is though as well, and I just want to make this super clear because like I am, you know, I'm not a trans medicalist by any means. And I think when it comes to accessing anything that's like considered modification of the body, and I'm talking from like friggin' piercings all the way through to like intense like organ altering like procedures, like whatever, like I think it's like it should be available for anyone to access. And like I think binders are one example that obviously we can see have a lineage in coming construction wise from garments that were used not only just for women but also on men as well, as we like saw with like the samurai example and the hanbok in Korea. And I think that it's funny, like I have a lot of people message me saying like not only like, oh, I'm non-binary, or like, you know, I am a woman but I want top surgery. Is that okay? Number one, yes, like you do you, like literally.
Yeah, do what you want with your
literally,
body.
like if it's going to make you happy, like you deserve to be happy, number one. Number two is the most asked question I get is like, again, same pretense, but can I wear a binder? And I'm literally like, yes, like to me, it's just like part of the costume, like costumery, I guess. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It's part of like the whole faff about like putting on an outfit and expressing yourself, to be honest. It's just like, to me, someone asking, is it okay to get or wear a binder is the same as someone asking me, is it okay to pierce my ears? Or is it okay to get a tattoo?
Yeah. Can I wear shorts?
Yeah, literally.
I kind of get that. I mean, I know a lot of cis women who like have large chests, big cup sizes, and, you know, obviously fashion, especially like fast fashion, does not cater for large busts with, I guess, a smaller waist, or, you know. So I know a lot of cis women with really large busts who wear a binder just so they can get in a button-up shirt.
Yeah, literally. Like if you can't find a garment that is like going to cater to your needs in terms of like that button down shirt, Like other things exist to help. They're just tools. Like they're just tools of fashion. And like I think it's funny. The binder is a really great example of a form manipulation tool that is for the wearer. It's not for anyone else. Like it's not men saying you need to look like this. It's not anyone saying you have to wear this garment or you should wear this garment because of XYZ. It's for self-affirmation, and it's for to feel good in your own body and to feel good in the clothes that you wear. And I think that is really revolutionary, and I think that's really like punk. And you know, that's why I really am a big advocate for like using fashion tools and things like that to get the most out of the outfits that you want to wear and to feel like the best in your body. Like that's it. So that's my TED talk.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thanks so much. I love that you've taken me through probably 2,000 years of chest binding.
You're welcome.
To end up where we are now.
Yeah. Which is, I don't know where we are now. Where are we? I got top surgery, so I'm not kind of in the throes of the binder community anymore.
Well, I keep getting recommended ads on social media that's like Maximum Healthy Bind, a whole bunch of different binders. I'm not really in the market for one, but I can say that there's plenty in great colours.
Okay. Yeah, the colours, and like even like there's racerback ones now and like full length, quarter length, whatnot.
It's so really cool. Yeah, it's good to know. But thank you so much for this. If you would like to hear more from us, you can check us out on social media.
Yes, and I do want to say I have taken the plunge, and by taking the plunge I mean finally gotten over my self-consciousness when it comes to building a Discord server. Don't know why I was so self-conscious about it, but I just was. I was like scared of things going wrong, and things did go wrong, but everyone was so nice about it not being like quite right on the first day. But we have a Discord server now, which is really exciting, and we've got a really lovely community growing on there. So if you would like to join us over on Discord, you can find the link in the episode description, as well as our Patreon, which is always open to welcoming more class cuties over there. Obviously on the Patreon you can get more exclusive content, as well as like behind the scenes things like vlogs and like kind of walks down memory lane, and sort of being the first to know in terms of live shows and all that. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone kind of knows what Patreon is these days, but there you go.
There you go. All right. Well, that's us for this week. And as we always say, not everything is gay, but there is gay in everything, including Jane Fonda's aerobics class.